You know? I mean, why do this to a whole population, and why is it always against their will?
Exactly. It's very much about also breaking kind of the consensus view on this, because if it has been a part of our life long enough, it must be okay. That's one of the most dangerous things there is.
Yes, you see, it's like all these other things. It's like asbestos. For 50, 75 years, it was fantastic, perfectly safe. Now you need a guy in a spacesuit to come into your school to get it out if it's on the pipes.
Yeah.
And DDT, as I say, they sprayed it on people during the war.
Yeah.
And we were told it was safe. We were also told that Gulf War syndrome didn't exist, and then it turned out it did. Then we were told that BSE wouldn't turn into CJD. The bovine disease, and yet it did.
Yeah.
We were told that smoking was perfectly safe. You remember back in the 50s, the government assured us that there was no side effect from smoking.
Right.
And then in the 60s, they admitted bronchitis. And then in the 70s, they admitted emphysema. And then in the 80s, they admitted it did heart and stroke conditions. Then in the 90s, cancer.
Cancer, yeah.
So they keep getting it wrong, and we keep waiting long periods of time. And then we get lulled into the belief that there's no harm because it's here.
Yeah.
But then if you look statistically, 98% of Europe don't do this.
Right.
They're not fluoridating their water supplies.
But listen to this one. We had a really interesting thing going on when I was in school, because we up here in Sweden don't fluoridate the water, but we had another thing, a mandatory thing connected with the schools. We had something called, and this is the Swedish word, flortant. This is like a lady that's coming to class. I don't know when it was, like once a month maybe, or maybe even more. And she's coming there with her nice little cart and little cups and things like that, pouring up, fluoride for all the kids and passing it around to all the kids so they get to rinse with fluoride, for like 5 minutes or whatever it is. And, accidentally now and then a kid swallow the stuff, but, prefer to not that you do it, but if you do, it's okay, Totally insane, that's what we had here.
Insane. Now, look at it, too. When you put it in the water supply, you're drinking it. It's passing the teeth at 100 miles an hour.
Right.
It's going down into your stomach, and now it has to find its way magically back to your teeth only.
Yeah.
How does it do that? It doesn't come in with a little tag that says teeth only.
Sure, exactly.
It's now got access to every cell of your body.
Yeah.
And you're telling me the only thing that it changes is your teeth. Well, how does it do this?
It doesn't.
Explain how it can possibly do that and not change other things. It doesn't make any sense, and it's beyond dangerous. And there have been children in other countries who have swallowed fluoride and died.
Yeah.
There have been a number of cases. There was a little boy, 2 years old in Australia, who took a number of tablets, and they pumped his stomach, and he actually died from 3 of those little pink tablets.
Really?
So that was a lethal dose for him.
Yeah.
It's surprisingly how poisonous this really is. I mean, fluoride is more poisonous than lead, and only marginally less toxic than arsenic. And like lead and arsenic, it's a cumulative poison, so it's not the one glass of water that does you any harm, any more than it's the one cigarette that gives you lung cancer.
Right.
Rather, it's the continuous, repeated doses over a long period of time that build up in your system and then come back to cause ill health later on.
Yeah.
And that's also, if in fact this isn't doing damage in childhood, I mean in babies, and so on, because the Chinese studies, there's 3 studies came out of China in the 1990s that showed that fluoride was able to cross the placenta and actually penetrate the blood-brain barrier of a fetus and accumulate, thereby apparently lowering children's IQs.
Really?
There's 3 studies came out of China that said that fluoride lowers children's IQs.
My God.
So it does neurological damage, which is exactly what the Germans said it did.
Right.
Exactly. And that's why they were putting it in the water supply.
Yeah. So, I mean, what do you think that they are doing here? I mean, again, if we tie this kind of together with what we talked about in the first hour, it feels like they're creating a species here that are either totally, infertile and can't, get their head around anything. A stupid, race of people. That's what they're doing here, isn't that right?
Well, that seems to be what the end result is.
And totally,
I can't see any logic in this, and I can't find anybody who can give me any logic. And when I went through the councils here in Northern Ireland, I would always ask the councillors to tell me some logical reason for this to be happening.
Right.
Just give me one logical reason for this.
Mm.
Tell me how it works, how it avoids changing bones if it's changing teeth.
Mm.
If the target audience isn't even drinking the water supply, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
And nobody could tell me. Nobody could come up with a logical reason for why this is happening, which then starts to make me look at other reasons for this happening.
And as you say there, I mean, let's say that I eat something, a product that comes from the UK or something like that, then all the water potentially that has been, produced or in the product itself is fluoride in there, and hence I'm also getting a piece of that, right?
Absolutely. You're getting it in your imports from all these countries that fluoridate.
Yeah.
So if you're buying beer from the Republic of Ireland,
right,
it's a good chance that there's going to have fluoride in it.
Yeah.
For the most part. Now, it's going to be in a lot of their baked goods and so on. There's no way of avoiding it. Once you put it in the water supply, it starts appearing in absolutely everything.
Everywhere, yeah, exactly.
And so you're getting larger and larger doses of this. And again, children are more susceptible to the changes from this than their adults,
now,
being in a developmental stage.
Did we? I can't remember. Did we talk about the fact that fluoride actually also is radioactive? Wasn't that right?
Yes, it's. I got a letter from a doctor in Holland because we used to get our fluoride, the toxic waste from the fertilizer industry, from Holland for the Republic of Ireland. Mm-hmm. And I asked a doctor that I knew in Holland to write to the manufacturers and ask them if there was any radioactive particles in it. Was there any uranium in it? And they wrote back, yes, there's uranium in it. Uranium-238, I think, which they make the bomb out of. And right. It's in the fluoride that's being added to people's water supply. But they said, well, but it's in such a small amount, and once it's watered down, do you no harm?
Right.
Well, whenever you're a newborn baby and you're on a bottle feed, and your first bottle feed is toxic waste from the fertilizer industry, and it comes in with uranium, even one isotope of uranium, I would think, to a baby is quite a big thing.
Yeah. Could break up the DNA again, irreversible damage, chromosomes break up, all of that.
Absolutely. I mean, we don't know what the full damage of doing something like this is. But certainly I don't expect to bring people into the world and then feed them toxic waste. It's a crazy thing we've done. Somehow it's the infatuation by governments of doing this. The benefits to industry are obvious. They're huge.
Yeah.
And then on top of this, I did read in another book, Jeffrey Smith's book, that the nuclear industry, of course, are putting this stuff out of their smokestacks too.
Yeah.
And as all these industries start to put out the fluoride out of their smokestacks, what's going to happen in those areas is that children are going to start having brown staining and white flecking on their teeth.
Mm-hmm.
And then they might start to sue these industries.
Yeah.
But if you put it in the water supply and it's in their toothpaste, well, then they can claim that it came from the water supply and the toothpaste and not their industry.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, yeah.
So there's a possibility that they're avoiding litigation here as well, in amongst all of this, by putting this in the water supply.
Mm. And
so it seems to me to be a large number of benefits to industry, no benefits to man at all, and a large number of side effects.
Yeah, definitely. And one kind of also, as I say, as a key area here is those who at the time were developing the nuclear bomb, as you said, uranium-238, potentially here in the fluoride. Could it be, do you think, that at the time when they were developing the bomb, one of the waste products was fluoride, and they needed a way also at the same time to kind of convince people that, no, what's being done here is it's good, it's safe, it's no problem. It's actually good for you. We can actually put it in the water or toothpaste or whatever, and it helps to prevent tooth decay. Because if this was to become an issue at the time, that could potentially even prevent them from furthering developing the bomb if people were outspoken enough against this and said, no, this actually causes cancer, it's dangerous, don't do this, don't continue with the weapons development here. So they needed to kind of, this needed to come together in some way. What do you think about that?
Well, I that is what happened. That's what I've read. It actually took place. The industry, they started getting sued by farmers who lived near the factories where this stuff was being, where the plutonium or the stuff was being processed to make the bombs,
right?
The atomic bomb, and the processing plants were dumping out fluoride in the oxygen around the plant and also in the water they were washing out. So it was starting to poison farmers and the cattle near the plants, and they started to sue. And the lawsuits were threatening to bring down the whole atomic bomb testing, and the whole thing was going to come to an end. And the American government then had to come up with some way of showing that the fluoride actually had a benefit to man, and if it could have a benefit to man, then obviously it couldn't be doing any harm. We wouldn't be feeding it to our children in toothpaste, would we?
Yeah.
If it was harmful, if it can make some positive change to humans, then it must be good for you. And so they then started to promote the concept that this was good for teeth.
Yeah.
But as I say, there's no real evidence of it. There's no scientific evidence that fluoride reduces tooth decay in humans. None. Zero. It's all statistical dental stuff that doesn't hold up. And there have been a number of dentists, Dr. John Calhoun, who you can look up on the internet, from New Zealand. He was the promoter of fluoridation in New Zealand up until he did a worldwide tour of fluoridated countries. He was invited by the other people who did fluoride in these other countries to come and visit. And when he did this visit, he was told at different countries that they had a problem, that actually tooth decay was higher in the fluoridated areas than in the non-fluoridated areas. All of their statistics showed this. When he got home, he checked. He asked for all of the records, and he found out that the same thing was happening in New Zealand. That, in fact, the fluoridated areas had higher dental decay. And they were wanting to keep this a secret. He then started to look at the studies that showed harm. And I have a tape of an interview with him where he's saying that back in I think it was 89, somewhere around there, that there was a study came out that showed that young male rats got bone cancer. And then the industry said, oh, yes, but that's just rats. And then a year later, a study came out of New Jersey, a huge study was done by the government, and they found that it was true in people, that young males were getting higher bone cancer rates. And then he started trying to get this back out again. And he spent the rest of his career fighting to get fluoride back out of the water supplies that he had fought to get it in. And he's not the only dentist that this has happened with. No.
I mean, there are others. I can't remember her exact name now. I think it was she's, I have to look this up later. Sorry about that. But it's in, again, the short film, The Fluoride Deception. Excellent. They talk about one scientist who encountered the same thing, who discovered the same thing, and she was basically, thrown out of the...
It's Phyllis Mulinex, Dr. Phyllis Mulinex.
Exactly.
She was a toxicologist at a lab, and she was contracted to do work on toxicity of fluoride. She did the work, and she had a new technique that could prove whether something was toxic or not, and neurotoxic, I think, as well. And she then used this technique on fluoride because she was ordered to. And it turned out that fluoride was very toxic and very neurotoxic. She then went to her bosses at the lab, and she said, this is the results. And the toothpaste manufacturers, I think, who were actually donating money for this work, said, oh, you can't publish this. What you're really saying is that our toothpaste is lowering children's IQs. And she said, well, yes, that's what I'm saying. And she said, so she actually came out with this at the time, and as soon as she went to publish